So why do some small percentage of these business owners sell for top value, top dollar in the value range? What are they doing differently that most of us just don't have a grasp on?
There's a few things here. It's a great question. We see it all the time. The first one, a planned sale is better than an urgent sale. So I sold a Kirkland-based business for $8 million, but he came to us in 2019 and he knew he wanted to retire. He committed to his wife that he would slow down and he would be retired by 60. So we got 4 years to plan for him.
Smart business owner, giving a little bit of a runway.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by One Accord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Value Factory Podcast presented by One Accord. We're coming to you live from Kirkland, Washington in our podcast studios. And today our topic is really hot. It's secrets for selling companies for top dollar. So many of the One Accord clients and those of International Business Associates, which I'm going to introduce here in a minute, focused on preparing companies and then actually selling them for top dollar. So we're going to discuss that. And so let me introduce our guest. Our guest is Seth Rudin. He is a senior M&A broker with International Business Associates. Most folks here locally call them IBA, and they cover the entire Pacific Northwest. I mean, up and down I-5 corridor, right, Seth? Yes, over. Saskatoon.
Yes,
okay, well,
some
there's
exceptions here.
Great. And I know Spokane as well. So that is awesome. So Seth has an MBA. What's your MBA in?
It's General MBA from Baylor. I was lucky enough that Dell sponsored me for the MBA.
Yeah, I know that you were an executive for both Dell and Microsoft. Pretty impressive resume. Over 30 years of experience, including leadership roles in finance at Dell and Microsoft. He also founded and sold 2 startups. So he's not only an amazing business broker, he's been there, done that, done it on his own. So that gives him a perspective that most of the business brokers I have met really don't have. And I've had the opportunity to get to know Seth, and I spent 2 minutes with him and I had more brain cells. He holds a commercial real estate license in both Washington and Oregon, and soon California.
Yes, I have an opportunity I'll be working on, and
Yeah.
the CEO of IBA have agreed. Let's see if we can expand IBA into California a little bit.
Great. And while his main industry focuses are aerospace, defense, manufacturing, professional services, and the pet space. I'm going to have to find out more about the pet space. Anyway, he was the IBA's Broker of the Year and the top sales maker in 2025.
Broker of the Year in 2024.
Oh, Broker in the Year 2024.
So you don't want to step on Sally's toes.
No, I got it. Yeah, and I know Sally. Anyway, it's such a treat to have you here, Seth. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your background before we get into our discussion?
No, I love doing business. I'm a baseball coach. I coach competitive baseball on the kids, and I treat this like pitching in a baseball game. That's how Gregory and I like to talk about it.
Oh, cool.
We're trying to get a buyer to sign a deal. We're trying to strike out a batter or trying to hit a grand slam, whatever you want to call it.
So is it competitive softball?
No, it's competitive baseball.
Competitive baseball?
These are 14-year-olds who want to make the high school baseball team.
So
our charter at FOC, it's called the Field of Champions. It's out of Preston. We have about 170 athletes who go through that facility. I coach one of the 13 teams that they have.
Wow.
14-year-olds, they're paying money. They want to get a higher degree of coaching so that they can be great high school college players. Second, make them better men, how to compete better, and then make them win. Right?
Wow, that's
and that order
fantastic.
too. It's not win first and everything else last. Right?
Life lessons. Yeah. What we are solely missing in so many sectors of our So just great to have you. Before we jump in, I have to understand the pet space. Are you
Sure.
talking about like pet stores or?
Can be anything. Could be business that sell aquariums. I closed on an aquarium shop in December. I'm taking a wholesale distributor in the aquarium space in the next month or so. We've sold several pet daycare and training facilities throughout their pet space. What we're going to talk about in one of our questions is, a highly desirable market space, aerospace and defense and others, because people are always going to spend money on their pets. It's like
Right.
children, like my wife and I, we don't have any. Can we take care of the pets? Like, can't I?
Yeah, well, there you go. My wife and I, same. We're empty nesters. We just had our first great grandbaby. Actually, just turned 6 months old, but we have been rescuing boxers for over 35 years. We just love the breed.
Nice.
And we just pull in one at a time, and we're a forever home in a local foster system. So anyway, that's great to know. So we found something that
They're local in Redmond. They make the freeze-dried pet food for dogs and cats.
is that right?
And I just had a celebration lunch on Saturday with them, and they would love to hear the story that you're a forever home with boxers. That would just
New boxer.
Hey everybody, Nick Anderson here, CEO of One Accord. Thank you for tuning into the Value Factory. I hope you're getting value from this episode. Listen, one of the ways that we partner with CEOs is using our system called Oasis, the One Accord system, our proprietary business operating system that is designed to shift your leadership team from reactive firefighting to focused execution. We provide the framework to align your vision with your strategy, ensuring sustainable growth and clarity at every level of your organization. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or the bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders.
Majority of business owners don't sell for top dollar, but there are a few who do. So why do some small percentage of these business owners sell for top value, top dollar in the value range? What are they doing differently that most of us just don't have a grasp on?
There's a few things here. That's a great question. We see it all the time. The first one, a planned sale is better than an urgent sale. So I sold a Kirkland-based business for $8 million, but he came to us in 2019, and he knew he wanted to retire. He committed to his wife that he would slow down and he would be retired by 60. So we got 4 years to plan for him.
Smart business owner, giving a little bit of a runway.
So he gave us what he needed. We did a valuation, a target plan, if you will, for the ones that are non-discretionary that they're required.
Like those that are serving pet families, right? I don't care how bad things get. I remember during COVID, we took better care of our boxer, I think, than we did ourselves. So that's a really good point. What are some of the other things that you see that really make the difference between most of us who aren't selling for top dollar and those that you counsel into selling at the top dollar of that value range?
So talking about 6 items.
Hey, great.
Okay. The first one, similar to the discretionary, just building on that is a moat, right? So they have some competitive advantage in the marketplace that others cannot break easily, right? The cost of capital to break into it's really high. The barrier of entries are difficult. They have patents, IP protection. I'm selling a business right now. They have a really high entry, the barrier. They have strong IP. They make a form of construction supply that's really hard to duplicate unless you have trade secret knowledge.
You're making me think of Michael Porter
Mhm.
and his book on competitive advantage. That's great.
Exactly.
Great. Well, keep going.
Key person risk. I mean, I'm sure you've seen this, right? Where a business is dependent 100% on the buyer or on the seller, and the seller leaves, all the relationships with the client start to
Value goes down.
So if you want to be successful, you need to delegate. You need to establish a team, the next man up, next woman up, who can take over and run that company. Don't hoard sales, operations, scheduling, finance, accounting, right? Have somebody over each one of those. They also call working in the business versus on the business, right? So working in the business, your day to day, everything's in your head. You have a team running it, but you're able to help market it, strategy, raise capital, expand the business, acquire other adjacent businesses and grow, right? So that's number 2. Key person risk. How do I replace that person? The third one is customer concentration.
I know that's a big deal. Explain that to our folks, because we're going to talk a little more about that later. Yeah, customer concentration.
So imagine you buy a business and you paid $1 million for it, and they only had one customer, and the buyer comes in, and the new customer doesn't like the buyer. So
You're out of business.
the business, you overpaid by 100%, right? $1 million because that's what they were worth. So you need to have diversity in that. Now there are decentralized organizations like maybe a Microsoft that, data procurement at an individual B level. So think, like Windows, Azure as a local company, right? As opposed to Boeing, which is very centralized procurement. They're going to negotiate things as a central procurement, and a strike of a pen, you could be gone. So there is some mitigating factors that customer concentration is acceptable. Just to what degree, right? But customer concentration will bring down the value. The more labels, logos you have, as your customer list, the better you will be, right? And we're typically looking 20 to 10% is the threshold, right? So anything above 20 is definitely a huge red flag. 10% is in the orange range. So C Corp, that would probably happen.
Is there any difference in your strategy if it's an S Corp, which are typically smaller, right?
Well, it's not my strategy. It's my strategy. It is a tax-driven decision. When it's the C Corp, because, there's a double taxation, right? You bring in the revenue into the C Corp and then you distribute it as a dividend. So when there's high capital gains taxes, your personal tax rate might be cheaper than paying the double tax, right? We save the money and then take the distribution.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Oftentimes C Corps will pay themselves a higher than minimum salary. So the add backs got to be careful on. And then the second part is how clean are the financials? So a buyer looks at your financials and they see the P&Ls are way off compared to the tax. The next one is employee risks, right? So I buy a company, it's got lots of employees, and one firm has all 1099s and the other one has all employees. So the ones with employees, the buyer's going to have more control of the situation. They're less likely to leave. A 1099 has the ability to leave, assuming that they can go generate the same income that they were under your umbrella.
Right. They're a contractor instead of a W-2.
Exactly. And then do you have an employment contract or an agreement with your employee, especially the critical ones? Critical ones would be somebody who has expertise in an area that's unique. Like if it's a CNC shop and you're CNC programming manager, you would want to probably have, an agreement on. Right? If it's your general manager who knows all the contracts and how to compete, you probably want to have an employment agreement with it. It's not a large deal killer or a large value degrader, but it is important to some buyers. So it's something that can certainly be managed a lot better and easier than obviously customer concentration. It's easier to get the employee to sign an employee agreement than it is to, hey, don't take any more business for the customer concentration.
Right. Do those employee agreements include NDAs or non-comps or anything like that?
Yes, they typically would have a non-competition, non-solicitation based on how much they get paid in state laws.
Lowers their interest maybe in leaving the company, which is good for the new buyer. I get it.
They might get some stock or some bonus that goes with it as incentives to sign it.
Cool.
And then
I was just going to say, you got one more?
One last one.
Okay, good.
It's Gregory's favorite one. And he's going to like this. Systems and processes. So buyers are looking for companies that have repeatable steps, standard SOPs. Obviously, at the small place that may or may not exist, but the more that you have, the more certifications of quality like ISO and so forth are going to make you more valuable and repeatable. Easier for the buyers to step in. Now, imagine you walk into a company and they're like, everything's cash recorded, but we report everything. And all the inventory is just in my head, right? Probably not going to do well.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like a nightmare. Okay, well, very exciting.
Hello again, it's Nick Anderson. Thank you for tuning in to The Value Factory. I hope that you're getting value from this episode. Now listen, if your organization is facing a leadership gap, One Accord provides fractional and interim C-Suite executives. Now these are men and women who deliver immediate clarity and measurable results. Our seasoned leaders integrate quickly into your team to drive strategic initiatives and maintain momentum without the long-term overhead of a full-time hire. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or the bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. Now back to the Value Factory.
So 6 distinct areas that really kind of determine whether a business is going to be at the top of that value range or at the bottom or even below. I mean, one of my experiences has been that most of the time, especially for the smaller companies, our audience is SMB, small, mid-size. Most of our audience, they're founder owners, they're CEOs, they're in the C-suite. We've got a lot of entrepreneurs that subscribe and watch this show. But I know that on the smaller companies, they really are not well organized, or they haven't documented their SOPs. If you don't have things documented, you run the risk of falling back into old habits. So that it's like a business operating system.
You're going to either end up writing in the transition plan during your transition period, or you're going to, if you have a seller note on one, can buy in, but can he actually change over what Andrew does in his business? They adapt to it. That's not that easy.
Right. And I know the greater the dependence on the owner, the longer that transition period needs to be.
Exactly.
We had a client, a high-tech client in the Bay Area, just wow, it went from 1 to 10 million. It just felt like overnight. It's probably a couple of years, but he ended up selling. And because he was really the product, they tied him up for 3 years for that knowledge transfer.
That's it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's great. So from your experience, Seth, what are the traits of strong business owners? We talked about how to increase the value toward the top of that range. So let's talk about the owner themselves, she or
Absolutely.
he.
So, a strong owner, and we look for that when we interview, do they understand their numbers? A lot of times brokers ask, or the M&A advisors ask, what are your revenues and profit? And they care just about what the number is. To me, that's secondary. I want to see how well you know your numbers. If you understand your business, you should know at a moment's notice how much revenue you made, how many units you're selling, or how many hours of consulting work, or whatever the units that you're selling in.
Margins,
Profit.
net income,
Exactly.
or net profit. Net income's more of a non-profit term, I think.
And then how well do you, are you managing and operating the business, working in the business, or are you working on the business? And how hard is it going to be to replace you? So if you're able to do those things and you value, the last part is something you rarely see in small business people, companies less than 25 million. And that is the sales.
They've got their face pressed up against the operational trees. They can't see what the heck's going on from 30,000 foot view.
Exactly. And they're not investing in sales. So they're just resting on their laurels. You know my brand, buy it if you like it. I'm just going to take your phone, take your calls and go. And that's hard to grow business. So the folks that do really well have some form of external sales program.
Yeah. Got to keep that pipeline full.
Absolutely. I like the analogy with the head into the tree on the operations side.
Well, we see it so many times. They are just so day-to-day, tactically operational focused. They just don't get away from that tree to really look at the big picture. And then, that causes them to miss some, really critical of the areas that can have an impact on that sales price. So I see it more than not. And I'm sure that your experience is similar in that a lot, especially on the smaller business side, they think the valuation of their business is maybe double what the market will bear. They think it's worth so much more.
Never get an owner thinks their business.
Never. No, that never. I'm just taking a guess. Oh, I was going to say, it's funny. It's really not. But I mean, that's where you can come in. And I know in your position, Seth, and of course, I know IBA just has a tremendous brand. The reputation of International Business Associates is so premium. And I believe you're the largest broker in this Northwest region. I know a few other brokers, but they're very small compared to yours.
We're the largest and the oldest. We're 51 years old now. We celebrated our 50th last year. Great milestone by the entire team and Gregory and the prior owner to that. And you got to get over that. And having that wealth of knowledge from both the size and the tenure of the company is great.
That's great.
And Gregory has a memory like you can't believe. He's an elephant.
He is amazing. In fact, we had One Accord had the pleasure of doing an event that was co-sponsored with IBA. Both Greg, your CEO, Nick Anderson, our CEO, were at the panel. We also had the owner of Hoheimer Wealth. And those were the three panelists. And it was a great program. We couldn't get people out of the room.
One Accord has been great to partner with. You've helped my clients. You've helped IBA's clients and the buyers too, not just the people looking to sell, but
wow, that's very kind of you.
We sell the business, we give it to a buyer. We want to see the buyer be successful. We have a fingerprint on it. So we love it when you could come in.
Our partnership goes back a ways. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on, because I know you've got some recent deals you've been working in. Then you can kind of explain, the handoffs or the difference, because we are absolutely strategically aligned and we don't compete at all. We don't do what you do and we never will. And, that's on the sell side, whether it's, looking good for private equity, a generational transfer, or just a straight sell, depending on their exit strategy. Sometimes, as you know, You might have companies that are not ready, and they need to do things like fill that sales pipeline, get the business operating system in order, train the owner how to get off the street and get up at the 30,000-foot level.
Hello again, everybody. Nick Anderson, CEO of One Accord. And again, I hope you are getting value from today's episode. I want to tell you about One Accord's business enablement services. These are built to remove operational roadblocks and modernize the systems that are slowing your growth. Now, we work alongside you to turn internal complexity into operational clarity, ensuring that your business is fully prepared for its next chapter and future scale. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, the link in the show notes or our bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. And now back to the show.
But I know you have a background in finance, especially with your work with some Fortune 500 brands like Dell and Microsoft. Very impressive. So what are some of the top financial factors that you assess and value for your projects? How does that all play into your valuation?
In addition to the two items we talked about, which was, transparency and how well they reflect on across the P&L, the tax returns, the balance sheet, as well as unpacks.
And you had mentioned something earlier that really struck me, and I didn't think about that before you mentioned it. But if CapEx is a big deal, like for manufacturers, one of the spaces you're expert in, if they just make huge capital investment that, something is going to depreciate over 10 plus years, that's another feather in owner's hat to sell their business, because that's an investment the new owner won't have to make for some time.
100%.
Yeah.
We definitely value the assets plus the earning capacity of the company. I want to go to market with it. I just had a conversation with a buyer before coming here. The business has had great years, had maybe a down year, and we're trying to say, hey, I want to make sure at least we're on the same page with the assets, right? And figure out how to handle the growth factor.
Right. And my guess is those really heavy asset companies, they're probably both pros and cons to that, depending on how they manage their CapEx.
Absolutely. And then you'll see, in those cases, you'll see a lot of effort with the CPA teaming up with the owners. And then in the negotiations, there'll be a quality of earnings, as I'm sure you're aware of. Our CPA firm will come in and take a look, and they'll come up with their spin on working capital. And sometimes that's the best way to do it.
And some of those, especially if they're smaller manufacturers, they probably need to have a fairly healthy reserve. Stuff happens with equipment.
Exactly. Yeah. So they need a budget for it.
Is another important KPI, financial KPI. I'm not assuming that it is, but I've had some owners of clients that we've worked with that were really proud of their per capita revenue. For instance, the high-tech company that we helped prepare to sell down in the Bay Area, $10 million company, but they only had 8 employees. Everything was technology and automated. Right. And so their per capita, their revenue per cap was off the charts.
Revenue per employee, there was key performance indicator for those in the audience who may not know what KPI.
Thank you.
It's definitely off the charts. It's a good conversation to have. We'll look at it if it looks great, bad, and they're still making revenue, because sometimes there's not a direct tie or correlation to the employee and the revenue. So,
and I'm sure the size of the company, the industry of the company, and the level of admin support that that you need in terms of producing or transferring the goods or services that you sell.
Yeah, like a large self-storage unit building, you probably don't really care about per capita, or e-commerce business.
Well, that's outstanding. So, Seth, you spoke about 20 minutes ago about customer concentration, and I know that's a big thing, and that was one of your 6. Could we dive in a little bit deeper on the impact that has on the company's valuation?
Sure. So let's go back to the company we sold in Kirkland. So in 2019, one of their largest customers was like 40% of sales.
That's a little scary.
It is. So if I buy the company and one customer doesn't like the buyer, right? And then I lose 40% of whatever purchase price. So it's a $10 million sale, right? I just spent $4 million and evaporated, if you will.
Right. Spent $4 million that you shouldn't have.
Right. Now, the solution isn't stop taking orders from customer, right? The solution is sell more. Right. So fortunately, my client was able to do that. The market was right. And so he sold more. So his revenue increased 30% in 2022 when I met him to sell his business. So we came back to the table. He had to retire by he was 60, as we go back to the story, right?
Oh, yeah, he had a
But he was
4-year
56.
runway.
So he had a 4-year runway. Each year we'd update his financials for him. And he knew where he was against the target. And then we took it to the market. We had value just coming, bless you. We had value this company say for $5 million, and we sold it for basically $9 million. So we got a 40% jump.
Wow.
Because he brought the 40% down to 15.
Do you hear that? Don't forget IBA. That's an impressive story.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Customer concentration, huge things.
There are some industries where the switching costs of their vendors are hard. So aerospace and defense is an industry where you should expect to see a high customer concentration. And that's because
the cost to switch to is supporting
the customer's costing of switching from the supplier to another supplier is high.
With regard to some of these situations, I mean, you're talking about barrier to switch because it's so expensive. And those dynamics are what give companies like Boeing real negotiating leverage over suppliers, right?
Correct.
So what is maybe not as good for the supplier is really good for the business customer like Boeing. And we've worked with Boeing suppliers, and they're pretty tough on suppliers, and they just squeeze everything they can out. I'm not saying that's a bad thing.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's, they're working their margins.
We're going to talk about a Boeing supplier in a minute.
Yeah, that they're working their margins, and this may be it, because I know your background in manufacturing is really stellar. So for companies in manufacturing in that industry, and of course it's a sector, there are so many verticals in manufacturing. What are some of the anomalies that need to be managed in a sale, specifically for manufacturers?
Sure. So first is how are they managing inventory? From raw materials to work in process to finished product and getting it out the door. How are they making sure that they are replenishing it properly? And how are they valuing it accordingly? And then when you get to WIP, and it's if it's just a small repetitive widgets, work in process. Thank you.
Work in process. Yeah. I'm channeling my inner KPI guy, safety, Seth right here.
I love it. Says if you're doing little widgets and it's repeatable, that's easy. But when you have project work, let's say you're a supplier for Boeing and they give you a project work that takes over a year to do, you got to measure the cost of the labor, the cost of the materials, and the time spent and the facility cost, right, for holding the product. And then you have maybe inspections that are happening throughout the process too. So all that's got to be captured. You got to be able to value it, and then you got to negotiate out what that looks like with the buyer. Does the seller get any reward for his efforts at generating that large project, and what is the margin he gets to keep versus what transfers over to the seller? If everything requires the owner to come down and show the staff and actually get their hands dirty, probably not a good sign. So when you walk the factory and the owners can tell you every order, that's probably also a good sign and a bad sign, right? He knows his business, but why does he know it so well?
Right. Is the customer concentration so tight that it's really easy to remember his 3 big customers?
Or is he running the factory? So maybe he doesn't have a customer concentration issue. He could have it. It could also be that he's just so hands-on and controlling, right? That or she has her hands are too much on that process, right? We need someone to have a factory manager, a production engineer, plant manager, right? They should be the ones who should say, hey, I understand what's going through my factory. I expect the owner to be able to say, here are the key steps in the process, right? That's fair, right? But the owner to be able to say what every work order is, that's pretty interesting. Now you can read the work order too. But
that's interesting how what might seem to be a pro could actually be a con because of that control issue or just not letting go.
And buyers will pick up on that.
Yeah.
Right. As you do the plant tour, and they're going through that, they'll come back and say, it seems like he knows everything in the factory. So
a question, just like within real estate, you don't want one agent representing the buyer and the seller. Is it different in as a business broker? Are you able to represent both, or are you more focused on the seller?
Great question. Thanks for asking. As you know, I am a commercial real estate licensed.
Yes.
So is everybody at IBA. which means we have to
Oh,
follow
I
the same
didn't know
rules.
that.
Yeah, everybody at ID is a commercial real estate broker. So if we sell a business and have property, we can sell it to at the same time.
There's a lot of moving parts in this. I was listening to all of them.
Yeah.
I'm attracting buds. I was listening to you talk about the extra complexities around the manufacturing space. I'm going, boy, there's a lot of moving parts. And I'm thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking if you're dealing with, say, an industry that doesn't have any cost of goods sold, it's not about raw material, like professional services. It's like if you're selling a law firm, there's probably fewer moving parts.
So there's definitely lots of moving parts to play. I want to go back and just answer one of your questions.
Okay, cool.
And I'll come back to this moving parts. So we represent the sell side only. We're exclusively the sell side.
To me, that really is an asset to the seller.
Yeah, absolutely. We do not want to be a dual broker. What that means is I'm representing the buyer and I'm representing the seller. They both have to sign off on it. And I can't protect my seller in the same way that I could protect him if I worked exclusively for the seller.
It's almost like conflict of interest, isn't it?
Exactly. It's illegal to do it without their consent. You got to have an open book.
Well, the fact that you are seller side focused, I think is just another one of the reasons why IBA's reputation is so solid. You know, we're working with business owners and everybody in, the B2B supporting business supply chain side, if you will. I've never heard a negative comment about IBA. And you were launched, it's easy to do the math, given that this is our 250th year as a country. Mm-hmm. You must have been launched in, 75, 76?
75.
Okay, there we go.
You're good with math.
Well, I remember our 200th anniversary. Was 2006. That was easy to subtract 1, then subtract 51.
Hey, everybody, Nick Anderson again. I hope that you are getting value from this episode of The Value Factory. Thanks for listening in. Now, listen, to build a high-performing organization, you must have a talent strategy, a strategy that attracts and retains the right leaders for your culture. Now, at One Accord, we help you reduce turnover and align your team's capabilities with your long-term growth goals to ensure that your vision is carried forward effectively. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or our bio and get connected to one of our senior leaders. Now back to the show.
Anyway, yeah, so kind of getting back to...
So let's talk about moving parts, right?
Yeah.
There are lots of moving parts. You have labor, you have machinery, you have inventory, you have raw materials, right? And then you got the facility. It's gotta be like, I did a Boeing tour yesterday. Like, how many moving parts? There's 3 million parts in a plane. They have like,
I'm never going to fly
meters.
You're scaring me to death.
It's actually one of the safest things, luckily, right? They do so many tests. They do such a beautiful job. It's why the world's most important company, as reminded to me yesterday, space, military, aviation, all in one company, right? Is here in our backyard, helping the beautiful Northwest ecosystem, keeping us flourishing with employees who feed our economy, who feed our schools, who feed, the pleasures that we get to enjoy. I mean, it's great to have Boeing here and the whole supply chain that's around 15,000 unique suppliers around the country.
Isn't that wild? And we are just miles away from the largest manufacturing building in the entire world.
Exactly.
It's just mind blowing, but you're right. Having an asset like that. In fact, Seattle really has several high value Fortune 500. So that's super cool. So kind of getting back to this IBA and One Accord partnership, you have talked before in our conversations that One Accord has helped prep companies for not only the sale, but the post-sale. You referenced it that, not only helping the company increase its value or increase the EBITDA and the multiplier through doing, business operating systems, planning, fractional leadership, all the things that One Accord does. But, and I love that you brought up that One Accord helps the buyer too, not just the seller, because they want to keep that momentum and take it to the next level.
Heck, I want to sell that company the second time.
There you go. And that's why IBA and One Accord's relationship is so fruitful. So talk a little bit more, Seth, about the recent project when we worked together.
Yeah, so we're still working on it. They're they have a huge platform to continue serving what they do and grow on it with commercial plane parts, which they didn't get before because you can't get that without the ISO.
Right.
So now they can make commercial parts for all the planes. They can work in military planes. They can subcontract. They can do all sorts of things.
That certification opened up to several other market segments.
Yeah. So now you have a buyer. He worked at Boeing, really strong, 20 years. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He left, buys this company. And now he has to establish process, systems, and a rhythm. And he's a first-time business owner. He's very successful working within the lines of a corporation. So here comes One Accord. The thought process is here, help him get centered and have a system of processes doing an EOS system, right? And so that's what's happening right now is one of your top lieutenants is in there helping him with a system of processes.
That's great. And EOS, for those of you who don't know, is the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And One Accord has its own proprietary program called Oasis.
And yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, well, it's, I'm living it. You're not, but instilling an EOS or a BOS is the way we call it, a business operating system. We obviously feel ours is better just because it's more flexible. EOS is great. I mean, it's, the platform that Gino developed everything, right? Mm-hmm. But it's very, very rigid. And that's not what One Accord is about. It's not what IBA is about. Mm-hmm. And that's just really cool. So we've gone through a lot of this. Before we start to wind down our episode, Seth, is there anything else you'd like to share that we haven't already covered?
I just really enjoy you as a person and Nick and your entire team. I mean, working with you guys are easy and this conversation's been great. I have a very full plate this year and I look forward to lots of opportunities.
Because you're darn good at what you do.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, this was great. And I so enjoyed our initial conversation, kind of preparing for your podcast. And I went, whoa, I'm going to be next to this guy for 40 minutes and I'm going to walk out with more brain cells. And I have. And so it's been a real treat. So there are going to be some people in our audience that wants to get a hold of Seth or IBA. So share with our audience the best way to connect with you.
Sure. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Seth Rudin, Rudin. You can also send me an email. I'm also on YouTube and Spotify if you'd like to hear some of my other episodes that I do. Thank you very much.
And the last name, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Rudin?
Correct.
Well, and you were just talking about that, but I mean, you can literally go to YouTube and type in Seth's name, Seth Rudin, and then maybe comma IBA, and you're going to find, other content that Seth has been doing. So this has been such a pleasure. I mean, you are so perfectly matched to, delivering gold, just gifts of information to our audience. And I want to thank you again. That's Seth Rudin at IBA International Business Associates. And this is your host, Andrew Ballard from One Accord, signing off our Value Factory and wishing everybody a great week. Let's grow. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.